Hey, and welcome to the Revenge of the Show, where I do all kinds of stuff on here. And this one, it's the final episode of Masters of the Air. It's my review and a little bit of information about what it's all about, some real information. But I want to get to something that one of my viewers just wrote on a message. He wrote, "Shh, don't tell anybody, but the British were fighting the Germans before the Americans were." No shit. I know that, but this is not about the Battle of Britain. This is about Americans, the 100th Bombardment Group, the 8th Air Force, and it's about these guys. It's from a book called Masters of the Air, and a little bit from Crosby's book. But it's like, this is not about anything else but these guys. So here's another secret. It's like if we did not go to Europe to fight the Germans, what would happen to England? You tell me, what would have happened? So anyway, let's get into this episode. It's about the 100th Bomb Group. It opens up the bombing of Berlin. It's a February 3rd mission, 1945, and it's Rosie Rosenthal's 52nd mission. These are the pictures of Berlin that day, and this is his B-17 that did that mission. He was the lead plane that day, and he got shot down, and two of the crew members perished in the plane. I believe it was two. I might be wrong. I might have to put a correction there, but I think it was two. And the bombardier, was severely injured, and the navigator tried to be with him to the end, but he had to bail out eventually. But the plane was spotted breaking up, blowing up. Rosenthal did make it to the area where the Russians would capture him instead of the Germans. They didn't want to bail out over Berlin. He won an air medal for that. And he got rescued by the Russians and was back at Abbott Field at some point. Germans shot a rocket at it, and it hit it. And it's documented. You could go to the 100th Bombardment Group's webpage, and you can find it there. It's aircraft number 448379. They went on this mission with 536 airplanes. 4 airplanes were lost, and they killed a person in Berlin. His name is Roland Frassler. I don't know. I don't even give a shit. He's a piece of shit. He was killed in this raid. And, spoiler alert, Rosie survived the war. He became a prosecutor. He, at one point, interrogated Hermann Göring, so he was involved in the Nuremberg trials. So going back to the people that were captured and going to the camps, they do go. The Russians are coming, so they got to get the prisoners out of the camp, move them to a different place. So they move them to two different camps. At least these guys go to 2 different camps. When they first were moving out, the Russians were coming, like I said. On a side note, if you live in the Chicagoland area back in the 70s and stuff like that, there was a early morning guy called Ray Rayner who showed cartoons and had a little dog called Cuddly Dudley. He was a children's host. He was in Stalag 3, and the Americans were in that camp, and for a little while, he helped out doing some of the work for the tunnels before the Americans were not involved in that whatsoever. Not at all. No Steve McQueen. Anyway, little side note. But so when they first were marching them out of the camp, the first place they went to was Stalag in Nuremberg, and that later became an encampment for SS members. They held 15,000 SS members at this camp. Then they went to Moosburg, where the prisoners were held from every country in the Allied field. Every prisoner from the Allied field were held there. There were 76,248 prisoners in the main camp. There was another 40,000 on the outskirts that were slave labor for the Germans. It was liberated on April 29th, 1945 by the 14th Armored Division. And that was commanded by Albert C. Smith, who is responsible for liberating 200,000 Allied prisoners of war That's pretty incredible. That's a hell of a job. During this period of the war, the Allies were aware that prisoners were being moved by train. So a lot of the times when the aircraft would attack, the fighter planes would attack planes, they were aware that there might be innocents on these trains, especially prisoners of war. So they started just aiming for the engines of the trains. Just a little side note over there. Now at the end of the show, you see a B-17. It should be a B-17G. That's what was used. This is the real airplane. They called these Chow Hound missions, and they were bringing food to the people, especially in the Netherlands and stuff like that. That's a real picture. And I think the reason why you don't see any B-17Gs animated in this series is because this one episode, they really show, like, it looks to be a real B-17. So maybe they just didn't want it to keep that consistent. They didn't want, I don't know if they wanted to confuse people. I'm not really sure why they didn't show any B-17Gs in this episode. It's a B-17 called Mike, and that's XRM-M that they use they paint on the real plane, and that's the one that they animated. So 17G differs from the earlier models because it's got this chin turn on the front, which is pretty cool. I'm going to get into a couple things maybe that you might want to watch a movie called 12 O'Clock High. You'll see a B-17 crashed on purpose, but it's back then there was B-17s. There's a bunch of them. This episode was directed by Tim Van Patten, who is the half-brother of Dick Van Patten. Now, the reason why I say this guy, he directed 20 episodes of The Sopranos, and every time I saw his name come up on The Sopranos, I was just like, this is going to be a good episode. The episodes that he directed in The Sopranos are some of the best episodes of The Sopranos. He directed a couple episodes of Homicide: Life on the Street. If you never saw that, it's a great, great cop show. And he directed The Wire, which people say is the best cop show, but I think Homicide is a great, even better than that. He directed a bunch of episodes of Boardwalk Empire. He directed 3 episodes of The Pacific. Anyway, a great director. So the idea for this show came up in 2012. In 2019, the show made a deal with Apple, and Apple decided to do it, and it was going to be on HBO, but it ended up being on Apple. And it's the first thing that Apple Studios started doing. So this thing's been going on for a long time. It cost an estimated $250 million to make this. Who knows, maybe more, I don't know. And one of the cameras that they used to shoot this was an Arriflex 416, which is a 16 millimeter film camera. I mean, they use real 16 millimeter film. For a lot of the movie, or not movie, for a lot of the TV show. So load it up with 16 millimeter. It's Super 16 millimeter, if I remember correctly. Another show that uses 16 millimeter film is The Walking Dead. We also use a Sony Cinemalta camera, a Venice, for this show. What did I think of this as a whole? I like it! I really, really liked it. There's some episodes that were just outstanding. And the stuff that they try to do with the reality of, they keep to the story, they keep to the book, they keep to the real people. There's a few things, that it isn't. But all in all, it's not. There are some people complain that they don't think that the animation is very good, or I think it's pretty damn good. I like the way it looked. The actors are great. Most of the actors are English. Bickle, who's in the earlier episode, the real person, and that Bickle is not. He's English. I believe he's English. He's from somewhere over across the pond, and. He's in a couple other things that you might have seen. He's the young guy that's in Dunkirk that dies on the boat. Sorry if you didn't see Dunkirk, but he's that guy. He's in Saltburn. He's a really good actor. But the original guy, they play around with it a little bit. Some people go, well, they gave him that Brooklyn accent. He was born in Wisconsin. I think he grew up out in California. But if it wasn't for this show, would anybody know this man's name? Or this, a lot of these people. You wouldn't know these names. Most of the people in the world wouldn't. So I think it does justice by bringing these people out there. People will watch this show and they will look at history and they will read these books. Masters of the Air, and whatever other, there's a million other books that you could read about the 8th Air Force and about other parts of World War II, which I think is important for people to read. I think it's important that people know what the hell fucking Hitler was trying to do. I think I said that in another episode before. I'm not going to get into that again. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you. I hope you subscribe. I hope that you got a little bit of information out of this. And, I try my best to get this out there before anybody else gets their reviews out there. So, I'm going into a cold. I might have been rambling for some parts. Hey, it's just me. So, thanks. Bye-bye.